Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the funeral service for Mr. Harvey Rubin. Officiating is Rabbi Andrea London.
Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki mimini bala mot, v'chen samach libi v'egel kivodi, apisarishkon lavetach. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult, and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Death has taken our beloved Harvey. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God. Be with them. For Harvey's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menchot yenahaleni, nafshi shovev yancheni, v'ma'glei tzedek lema'an shemo. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Esainai el heharim, me'ain yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים, עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לצעד ועת לעקור נטוע, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות, עת לבכות ועת לשחוק. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And now we take these precious moments together to speak about the life of Harvey Rubin. As we mourn his loss, we also come to uplift and to celebrate the 93 years of his life, a life that Harvey lived fully, with great enjoyment for family, for friends, of laughter and companionship. Oh God, we thank you for the many blessings that we experienced in those 93 years of Harvey's life. As we now reflect on his legacy, I call on his son, David, to speak.
Thank you, all for attending this Zoom funeral for my dad. Aviva, my mom, and Rachel and Mimi, my sisters, really appreciate our family and friends caring and taking time during this epidemic to honor my dad by attending this funeral service. We hope all of you remain safe and healthy during this perilous time. Also, thank you to Rabbi Andrea London, the senior rabbi at Beth Emmet in Evanston, the congregation that my parents belonged to for, I think, almost 50 years. My twin sister Rachel and my son Ben will say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And now I'll ask your son, Harvey's grandson, Ben, to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today for my grandpa Harvey. To everyone that knew him personally, you know that he was quite the character. When my sister Julia was very young, before I was born, she could not yet say grandma or grandpa, so she called my grandma Biba and my grandpa Papu. And from that point on, he was Papu to my sister, my parents, and myself, and that silly nickname ended up fitting him perfectly. Papu was fun-loving, with a hearty laugh and a big smile. When I was young, I called him my best friend, which is something he never forgot. Most importantly, he was the first person I knew who had dentures, and that was the funniest thing in the world to myself and Julia. And we thought that every old person must have them since he did. He always had that scratchy beard that she felt whenever you hugged or kissed him, and he always left some of his meal unintentionally on his shirt or in his beard to save for later, which is something he unfortunately passed on to future generations of Rubin men. My grandpa was a manifestation of the American dream. He grew up in an immigrant family that had very little in Humboldt Park. He went to junior college for 2 years to be able to afford going to the University of Illinois, in which he became the first of now 3 generations of Illini graduates in our family, between him, my dad and Aunt Rachel, and myself. He then traveled Europe as a young man through Americans for Democratic Action, which is a group that pushes for progressive policies and social and economic justice. And given our family's value system, it is really cool that our patriarch was able to develop his love of travel and thirst for knowledge through an organization like that. When he came back, he eventually met my grandma, and they shared many of the same loves and interests. They built a life together with 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and were married for over 60 years. In that time, they traveled the world and remained the biggest world travelers that I've ever known. I always thought their condo was so fancy because of the things they accumulated from their travels in it and the furniture that they had. He loved to read and travel and was always curious to learn more, and that curiosity never waned as he got older. My grandpa was always so proud of his 3 grandchildren, myself, Julia, and Aaliyah. He always made us feel special and loved to hear about how we were doing. My grandpa was a notoriously bad driver my whole life, and probably his whole life. And even though my mom did not trust him to drive me at 85 years old, he did drive me from Evanston to Lakeview when visiting them while in college. Admittedly, even at the time, I knew it was probably not the best idea. But we had a great conversation, and it is a fond memory that I have of the 2 of us together. Sorry for disobeying you on that one, Mom, but I'm glad I did. I moved to Chicago in the summer of 2013 after I graduated college. My grandparents and I made it a point to see each other regularly once I moved here, and I will always cherish those memories of picking them up from their condo as they moved as slowly humanly possible to get in my car. I would strap them both in, and we would go out to eat, and I loved doing that with them. My grandparents both loved fine dining throughout their life, and ironically, our last meal out together was I guess what could be categorized as a double date with my now fiance Carly at the classiest of establishments, the Red Lobster in Lincolnwood. It was close to their assisted living facility, and as I previously mentioned at this point, Papu and my grandma were moving at what can best be described at a snail's pace, and both were using walkers at that point. But I was so glad we were able to spend that time together, and they were able to meet and get to know the love of my life. Spending time with them and having my grandparents reminisce to us about their lives was really something that I feel very lucky to have been able to do during this period in my life. Like all of us who knew him well, it makes me so sad that I did not get to say goodbye nor see him in person since March. I know him and my grandma would have loved to have been at my wedding, but I know when that day happens, he will be dancing in spirit with a big smile on his face, a gin martini or a glass of wine in hand, and with that infectious laugh booming for everyone around him to hear. He was a great grandpa, and since the very beginning of my life, one of my favorite people to be around. I loved him very much. I can only hope my future grandchildren will have fond memories of me like I do of him. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Ben, for your beautiful reflection. And now I'd like to invite Harvey's daughter, Rachel, to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. Our father, Harvey Rubin, lived 93 wonderful years. He loved people and had an engaging personality. His smile would light up the room. David, Mimi, and I made a list of all of the things he was to us and to others. He was funny, witty, playful, a math arithmetic whiz. He could do quick sums in his head way after his short-term memory was failing him. So balancing his checkbook was never a problem. He was a writer extraordinaire. He was an excellent drawer and artist who would draw pictures of us for us when we were little kids. He was an actor. He was an actor. He was an actor. That was so much a part of his life. He was so creative. He was stubborn. He was a neat freak. His sock drawer is scary organized. He was a world traveler. He was a storyteller. He loved puns, especially back and forth with his best friend, Mel Waskin. Politics. He read every book that came out after Watergate and many books since. Rich dinner table conversations. He remembered every play that he saw. He loved movies and dining out and the company of friends. He was a bridge player and very competitive. And he played the lottery. He worked many years in advertising and especially loved the creative aspect of his work. He was an extraordinary writer and wrote a number of well-known advertising jingles. We encourage you to Google the 1960s commercial for Raid insecticide to see how much fun commercials could be when creative people were given free rein. You remember him telling us that the artists had to refrain from making the bugs too cute because they would get killed by the spray in the animation. He also wrote copy for Dial Soap and brought me home a 45 record with Dial jingles on it. He played the lottery. And when David and I were in college, he won $5 and gave each of us $1. He mailed ours to David and me, and included in the envelope was a typed page of aphorisms about saving money. A penny saved is a penny earned. Pound foolish, penny wise. You get the idea. Oi, a whole page. He loved acting, and he was very active in community theater for decades, especially with the Hull House Theater on North Broadway and the Old Town Players, which served as the training ground for many professional actors early in their careers. We remember that he was often away at rehearsals in the evening, and we would stay up late so he could read to us when he got home. He had a wonderful range of voices, and you've never really experienced Maurice Sendak if you haven't heard his reading of Where the Wild Things Are. His monsters were thrilling. When we were a little older, we could go watch his rehearsals, and he especially loved the musicals, though his singing voice was not very refined. Singing the scores from The Boyfriend was a major pastime at home. He loved the spectacle of theater and loved going to plays and movies, especially with our mother. Later in his life, he joined the opportunity to do the voices with his nephew, Danny Romaine, for a radio ad for American Science and Surplus, a iconic business on the West Side. He had a kind of second career after retirement following by serving on the Joseph Jefferson Committee, and often went to review plays 3 or 4 times a week. He remembered every play he saw, and he could quote freely from Shakespeare. He loved his family, and especially his wife, Aviva, our mother, of 64 years. He was way ahead of his time in supporting her working outside the house and in sharing domestic duties. Mom usually did the cooking, but that was because she was an excellent cook, and he recognized the value in letting a true artist work. He made the salad and took charge of cleaning up after dinner. And in the last few years, he stepped in when our mother became too tired to stand in the kitchen. He did mow the lawn, but hated this job and made us kids do it. He never invested in a power mower, so we used an old push mower while he watched us get our exercise from inside the house. When Mom went back to work, he was given the choice of doing the laundry or the shopping. He chose the shopping and never complained again about the price of food and would buy treats for us when we were coming home from college. In retirement, he traveled the world extensively with our mother and enjoyed trips to Europe, especially a theater trip to London my parents took with their granddaughter Julia, and going to museums and seeing the sights in Italy and Greece and Spain. He also enjoyed visits to Israel, India, Vietnam, and especially Thailand. And in later years, he enjoyed spending a month each winter in Mexico. He played tennis well into his 60s and was a wonderful ice skater and dancer, but he never could throw a baseball. He was a devoted father, and we loved when he took us for bike rides. On the weekends, he would put one kid in a metal frame child seat, no helmet, and we would go to the park or zoo. Sort of a hair-raising experience, and it's a miracle no one broke any bones, but we loved it, especially the stops at Francis's Deli on Clark Street. Later, he taught each of us to drive a car, which was ironic since he was a terrible driver. He was always pushing down on his right foot to hit the non-existent brake pedal on the passenger side. Then when he started running more errands when Mom went back to work, the car started getting mysterious dings and dents. He often blamed wayward shopping carts in parking lots that must have hit the car while he was in the store. He especially loved his grandchildren, Julia, Ben, and Aaliyah. He called Julia and Aaliyah his Shana Mayles, and enjoyed seeing Ben as a caring and thoughtful young man when he moved to Chicago. He was so proud of you all and all of your accomplishments, and just for being kind and caring human beings. Your bar and bat mitzvahs and graduations were precious to him. He and Mom were so proud of Aaliyah when they came to her 2019 high school graduation in one of their last excursions out together. He loved his extended family, and we especially remember seeing him with his cousin Bobby at family events, sharing their banter and humor. When he got together with his sister Sheila, they did hilarious routines remembering their early years, especially if they got a bit tipsy. He enjoyed the finer things in life, and when my sister Mimi started doing the shopping for them over the last few years, he noticed that gin was always at the top of the shopping list. Well, I think I'm closing here now, and we hope these memories give some sense of the full and complete life our father lived. He lives on in our memories and in the impact he had on the people close to him. We look forward to hearing your memories of him tomorrow night at the Shiva. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel and Ben, for those beautiful and touching memories. Harvey really lived quite a full life in his 93 years, beginning, very humble beginnings in Humboldt Park above his grandfather's bakery, and then graduating from the U of I, as we heard now, 3 generations graduates from the University of Illinois, growing up with his one sister and close to his many cousins, and about his 40 years in the advertising business, starting out as a copywriter and eventually becoming the creative director of an agency. And Harvey's love and life of community theater. He met his beloved wife, Aviva, in the early 1950s while they were ushering for a community theater production. I hear that he was especially proud of his Boris Karloff impression. And as Rachel told us, he sang songs to his children with the musical The Boyfriend. He was involved in many theater companies, including the Hull House and the Old Town Players. And he was also served as a committee member of the Joseph Jefferson Awards for decades, judging dozens of theater productions every season. Harvey and Aviva raised 3 children, David, Rachel, and Mimi. They first lived in Chicago, and then they moved to Evanston in 1972. And they remember a childhood filled with going to theater and museums, not so interested in sports, except as we heard from Rachel, with Harvey was a good tennis player and an amazing ice skater. And he passed his love of theater on to Rachel and Mimi. Rachel was the student manager of the scene shop at the Evanston Township High School, which was very helpful in the Rubin household because she learned to fix things. Harvey was not at all handy with tools. And then we heard about his 3 grandchildren, Julia, Ben, and Aaliyah, who were so important to his life. He and Aviva would visit Julia and Ben often in St. Louis, and he and Aviva took Julia to England, and she credits her love of theater museum and writing to Harvey. And Aliyah, he would take to the children's theater. We heard about the love that he and Aviva had for travel and dining and the many places that they went around the world. He and Aviva felt very connected to their Jewish tradition. Tradition gave him a sense of comfort and belonging, and whenever he and Aviva would travel, they would seek out the Jewish sites. As we remember him today, we think about his legacy, his enjoyment of life, of family, theater and travel, laughter and jokes, a gin martini and dancing. We say goodbye to him now, to his children and his children-in-law, David and Rachel, Rachel and Sam and Mimi, his grandchildren, Julia, Ben, and Leah, his sister, Sheila, and his wife of 64 years, Aviva. He had so much in common with Aviva. They were aligned politically, and they shared a love of theater, music, food, and travel, and built and lived a wonderful life together, and have left a legacy of a tremendous family. Zichrono livracha. Oh God, may Harvey's memory always be for a blessing as we continue to share the memories of his life, those stories, the laughter, and the love. God, we pray that Harvey will rest in peace and that his memory will bless us. Amen. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and of your glory. We now take a moment to offer in our own hearts a silent prayer for Harvey and for Harvey's family. I invite you now to rise as you are able for El Moled Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Moled Rachamim shochem bamromim, hamsei menuchana chonatachat kanfei Shechina, im kedushim etorim kazor akia masirim et nishmat Chaim ben Tzvi v'Chana, shalach le'olamo. Ba'al harachamim yasirehu b'seter kanafav l'olamim, v'yitzro b'torah chaim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Harvey Rubin, son of Harry and Anna, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated.
This concludes the service. The families invited everybody to a Zoom Shiva tomorrow evening. That information and a link is on our website at chicagojewishfunerals.com.